New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is catching some heat today from the pro-Israel crowd, the activists who decided to, conceal the fact that there were protests specifically over the sale of illegal settlements on stolen land, not because Jewish people were practicing their faith at a synagogue in New York City. So let's get to the details here, because Mamdani was specifically condemning an event that took place on Tuesday this week in New York City. It was held at a synagogue, meaning that a group of people behind this event chose to carry out an event at a place of worship that has to do with the sale of illegal settlements in the West Bank, in the Israeli occupied West Bank. That's what was going on. And Mamdani rightfully condemned the event. Now, protesters also condemned the event because they protested the event in front of the synagogue. And things got a little bit out of control, but I'm a little bit more concerned about the fact that we are allowing organizations, including a real estate firm, which I'll get to in a minute, we're allowing them to carry out the sale of illegal settlements here in the United States. Why is that okay? I like that Zohran Mamdani condemned that, and I like that people are protesting it. I don't care. I don't care what they chanted. If anyone carried out an act of violence, that's a different story. I think that's when law enforcement should get involved, but I don't care what they chant. I don't care that they protested in front of a synagogue. What is a place of worship, really? A place of worship is where you go to practice your faith. No one was practicing their faith in that synagogue that night. You know what they were practicing? The sale of illegal settlements in the Israeli occupied West Bank. That's what they were doing. So let's be clear about the framing of the whole situation as we move forward, shall we? So, first, a few more details about this event that took place on Tuesday. So it was, again, for illegal settlements on stolen land in the West Bank, and it was held by an organization known as Tivuch Shelley, a firm that markets real estate in Israel and the West Bank to English speakers here in the United States. Its website says that the group plans to host several more of these events in New York City in the coming days. And as mentioned earlier, they held the event in a synagogue. And holding the event in a synagogue is strategic because they know that there are gonna be protesters, and then they can frame this as, oh my God, we are victims. We are victims of pro-Hamas protesters who came before a synagogue to protest people of faith. No, that's not what they're protesting. They know what they're protesting, okay? They're protesting the very immoral act that this group is engaging in a place of worship, by the way. But anyway, the event, of course, drew the protesters, and then these loathsome people selling the illegal settlements cried about it. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators chanted, "Long live the Intifada," and "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," slogans that many pro-Israel groups view as calls for violence. I don't believe them. I don't believe that they see it as a call for violence. They're pretending to be aggrieved and offended and scared for their lives. They weaponize their identity in order to silence people who are condemning Israel for carrying out not just violent acts, not just genocidal acts, but literally stealing land that doesn't belong to them. That's the reason why they're being condemned and protested. Nearby, a man slowly walked around the pro-Palestinian crowd, filming them while wearing a t-shirt with the logo of the Jewish Defense League, an extremist group of which an offshoot was linked to the attempted assassination of a Palestinian activist in March. Sounds like a terrorist. Anyway, New York Assemblyman Micah Lasher, of course, took full advantage of the situation to say that the protest was intended to create fear in the hearts of Jewish New Yorkers and stigmatize the community. That is not what it was intended for. That is not what it was intended for. These people never draw any attention to what the event was about. Again, this wasn't a regular, day in the synagogue where you have Jewish people of faith coming together to practice their faith in a place of worship. That is not what happened here. This was an event to sell illegal real estate. That's what this was about. But if you look at the way the media here in the United States frames it, you would think something entirely different, because the media here seems to be biased in one direction. So kind of hiding the ball, much like this New York assemblyman did, is what they do. So Mayor Zohran Mamdani condemned the event. Sam Raskin, his spokesperson, said that Mamdani was deeply opposed to the event because it includes the promotion of the sale of land in settlements in the occupied West Bank. And he's right in condemning that. These settlements are illegal under international law and deeply tied to the ongoing displacement of Palestinians, which is true. And if you've ever seen any of the videos of these Israeli settlers and what they do to Palestinians in their rightful homes, you would understand how loathsome this firm is for selling these illegal settlements on US soil. I mean, they literally shoot and kill innocent Palestinians who refuse to leave their own homes, refuse to give up their homes to these armed terrorists. In fact, what's happening in the West Bank right now has made me realize how important it is to have your Second Amendment rights. Because these Palestinians do not have access to firearms. They have no means to defend themselves and their own property, thus paving the way for these Israeli terrorists to steal their homes, steal their land, and build illegal settlements. Mamdani's office also, by the way, expressed commitment to protecting places of worship, saying that our administration has also been clear that we are committed to ensuring safe entry and exit from any house of worship, and that such access never be in question while all protesters are able to exercise their First Amendment rights. Well, that's the case right now. That's the current environment in New York City. Jewish people in New York City practice their faith every day in the city. And you don't see stories of pro-Palestinian protesters harassing them or doing anything wrong. That's because the protests that happened on Tuesday had nothing to do with the Jewish faith. It had everything to do with the sale of illegal settlements. Of course, we're supposed to find the protesters immoral and wrong. We're supposed to beat up on them. We're supposed to focus on the very real distraction that is being used as a distraction here, the protesters themselves. And we're not supposed to be concerned at all about the sale of the illegal settlements. But I choose to focus on what matters here and not let the pro-Israel crowd hoodwink me into thinking that the protesters are the real issue here. Anyway, the way the media chose to cover the story was also pretty horrible. Let's start with the New York Times. Now, I want to be clear that the body of the story was actually pretty fair. The headline, though, that's a different story. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are informed merely on headlines alone. So you tell me if this headline and the subheadline gives you an honest view of what's going on here. Again, this is the New York Times reporting on it. Pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel demonstrators rally outside synagogue. Oh, is that what happened? It was just a rally outside of a synagogue? Okay, well, maybe there's more information, more clarity in the subheadline. For the second time in 6 months, protesters gathered outside Park East Synagogue, which was holding an event to promote real estate sales in Israel. A heavy police presence kept the two groups apart. Would it bother them to just add one more word to that? Illegal real estate, illegal real estate. But they couldn't do it. You had to get to the second paragraph, the second sentence of the second paragraph of the piece to learn what the reality is. The evening promotes American real estate purchases in Israel and Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, the latter of which most of the world considers to be illegal. Dozens of pro-Israel counter demonstrators also assembled at the site. Now that was the New York Times hiding the ball. You'd have to make sure you click on the link. You'd have to make sure you get to the second sentence of the second paragraph to know what is really happening here. But the rest of the piece was fair. I'm gonna give the actual reporters some credit for keeping it balanced, but the headline, which is typically written by the editors, well, I mean, you guys know how the New York Times operates. Lulu Garcia Navarro, the reporter who interviewed Tucker Carlson just this past weekend, admitted that she was the former correspondent on Israel and Palestine for the New York Times, and then she spent the entirety of that conversation excoriating Tucker Carlson for daring to ask about Israel's intentions in Gaza, in Lebanon, its intentions when it comes to the war against Iran. So a journalist asked Tucker Carlson why he wanted to ask questions. Anyway, Fox News was even worse, of course. I mean, is anyone surprised by that? Here's what they posted on X. A mob of anti-Israel protesters swarmed the streets outside a historic Manhattan synagogue, clashing with police officers and waving Palestinian flags. The crowd led chants of Israel should not exist, while also targeting the NYPD, comparing officers to the KKK. The latest protest comes as the New York Police Department searches for 4 people wanted in connection to an anti-Semitic graffiti spree in the city. They should check for members of the Jewish community. Just keeping it real, there's been a lot of people who have been caught faking hate crimes in New York City specifically. But anyway, we'll see who gets arrested in that case. By the way, vandalizing property with hateful symbols is wrong. I condemn it, but I'm gonna wait and see who gets caught here. Mario Nafal provided yet another reason why I don't want to go on his show. He says that New York under Mamdani is becoming less safe for Jews. Is it? This couple was surrounded and harassed last night outside the Park East Synagogue event. People shouted, "You rape men, you rape children, you effing sociopath." I mean, where's the lie? And then here's how it should be done. Just keep it simple. You don't have to, go out of your way. Drop site news, protests outside the Israeli real estate event in New York City where illegal land sales are being advertised. Simple, to the point, doesn't hide the ball. That's the reality. So weaponizing identity in order to smear people who actually have the moral high ground here. The protesters, they have the moral high ground. Zohran Mamdani in condemning the event, he has the moral high ground. We should not allow groups to facilitate international war crimes on US soil, but that's what's happening right now. So the people behind the event, they're the bad guys. Let's be clear.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.